license when it expires on July 8, 2 years from now. He said the government would negotiate new licensing terms.
I wish to advise the country that this morning, in my capacity as energy minister, I wrote the Jamaica Public Service Company and gave formal notice of the government's intention upon expiration of the current All Island license not to renew under existing terms. My letter to the JPS was written pursuant to condition 27 of the license, which provides the government of Jamaica to acquire the licensed business at the expiration of the terms of the license. That expiration date is July 8th, 2027. Let me make it clear, it is not the intention of the government of Jamaica to take charge of the operations of the JPS.
Now, the minister said the decision not to renew the license comes in the context of the fact that the cost of renewable energy has been falling worldwide, and he says consumers in Jamaica should be able to take advantage of that.
The current licensing arrangements with the JPS does not provide sufficient incentives to bring renewables into the grid at the scale, and it provides for generation via imported fossil fuels, which is not cost effective. It is over time to reform. As we negotiate a new license, the government is determined to extend every effort to put the people of Jamaica in a position to take full advantage of the possibilities to reduce the country's energy bill and to reduce the cost of electricity to Jamaicans.
Listening there to Energy Minister Darrell Vaz, and we did invite the minister to talk to us. He said he was unavailable today. We hope to have him on tomorrow. We have with us the opposition spokesperson on energy, Phillip Paulwell. Let me just remind you as well, our numbers or WhatsApp line 876-254-0693, 876-254-0693. Give us your first name, give us your general location if you have issues or concerns or questions on this particular issue. Mr. Paulwell, appreciate you talking to us as always. Thank you so much.
Yes, hi, good afternoon to you and to your listeners.
All right, I was looking through the statement and you pointed to the fact that you've been calling for the discussions around these negotiations for a new license to start for a while, which is true. We've heard you make that call on a number of occasions. Let's go through those, some of your primary concerns in relation to what's happening here. One is that you speak about this Energy Council you said hasn't been meeting.
Yes.
So tell us what's the difficulty you have there and what you would want to get out of that.
Of course. But if you permit me though, Dionne, to just address what I think is a fundamental issue of what occurred today, because as I speak to you now, I'm not clear exactly what the minister said today, because I had assumed, based on the statement I read, that what he's seeking to do is to amend the existing license to modernize and to do other things to make sure that it fits with today's situation. But I'm seeing a report from the JPS just now saying that it is confirming that it has received formal notification from the government indicating its intention of acquiring the licensed business at the expiration of the term of the license. Now, that's a completely different situation from the minister saying, well, we can't live with these terms unless they are modified, and we're seeking to go through this process of negotiation. If you're seeking now to give formal notification that you are intending to acquire the licensed business of the company, then the next discussion has to be is compensation. What are you going to pay for this? And that's why I'm a bit alarmed, because I didn't get that from the minister's presentation today. As you rightly put it, since 2023, I have been alerting the government to the fact that the license will come to an end in 2027, but that by the 8th of July 2025, you need to notify the JPS of your intentions. And I was quite clear. In fact, I put forward specific proposals in relation to some of the new measures. But a fundamental problem that this government has is its failure to properly consult with stakeholders. And that's the reason why I mentioned the fact of the Energy Council, which was established in January 2012 and survived into this new government until recently when it was disbanded. Now, that council comprises stakeholders across the spectrum, including consumers and opposition. And we would sit together, we would examine proposals from the government, and we would respond and make proposals for changes. But at least when you finish those deliberations, you know that you're coming out with a united position. That is no longer the case. So that's a fundamental weakness of the situation we're in now.
Hold that thought for me, please, Mr. Paulwell. Let me take the break, do a little bit of business. We're talking to opposition spokesperson on energy, Phillip Paulwell. He's talking to us about the government's announcement today that they're not going to be renewing the JPS All-Island electricity license and on the same terms and conditions. Well, stay tuned. We'll soon come.
Stand by. We're going to rejoin Dionne Jackson Miller interview with opposition spokesperson on energy, Phillip Paulwell. We take a commercial break here on the Make We Talk program too.
Time come for a new deal for our teachers, our police officers, our nurses, our firemen, our correctional officers
with
who
the
serve
Super Lotto
the
jackpot
public and deserve to be treated with respect. Investment in human development must be the key. It must be the key. And when it comes to education, the People's National Party's conviction remains the same. Education, education, education is at the top of our priority list. We are committed to building an education system that is inclusive, equitable, and excellent. Bold steps and real investment are needed to ensure that every child from the earliest years through to tertiary education has the opportunity to succeed. We have the plan and we are ready. Today, I reaffirm our party's commitment to excellence in education. Our approach to early childhood development will provide performance-based incentives for early childhood facilities to give them additional resources to improve standards. At the primary and secondary levels, we will implement a comprehensive program that is targeted and provides targeted support to each aspect of the curriculum. Expanding access to tertiary education is also a critical part of the mix. I have long advocated for the removal of guarantors for student loans, a policy that this government has eventually adopted, and it was a significant step.
Okay, back with you. We're talking to Phillip Paulwell, opposition spokesperson on energy, who is responding to the announcement by the energy minister earlier today in relation to the JPS All-Island electricity license. Now, I'm trying to get a little bit more from that statement from the minister, but let me just share with you a little bit of what JIS is reporting here. The government will not be renewing the JPS's current All-Island license under the existing terms upon its expiration on July 8, 2027. Mr. Vaz said JPS had been officially advised. Then he said, my letter to the JPS was written pursuant to condition 27 of the license, which provides for the government of Jamaica to acquire the licensed business at the expiration of the term of the license. He said the formal notice given to JPS will allow the government the remaining years of the existing JPS concession to implement holistic changes. And he said it's not the intention of the government to take charge of the operations of JPS. Prior to the expiry of the current license in 2027, we intend to negotiate new licensing terms and conditions with potential investors that are favorable to the people of Jamaica. Mr. Paulwell, what that says to you?
Well, I'm not sure. Have you seen the JPS statement? Because
I was asking for it to be sent to me. I think
yes,
I just have it.
I can read verbatim. It says, JPS has confirmed that it is in receipt of formal notification from the government indicating its intention of acquiring the licensed business at the expiration of the term. Now, that is completely different from what JIS or even the statement that I saw from the minister saying, because once you have indicated an intention of acquiring the licensed business, then the next discussion has to be to do with compensation. And that, I think, would have severe consequences. And why I suspect the JPS CEO has just said that he has grave concern about that. Now, certainly he couldn't have grave concern if the minister was merely saying, listen, we cannot live with the current terms of the license. We have to modify them. Let us go into negotiation to modify these terms. And I think that would be reasonable. And we certainly would support, as I have indicated, there are a number of things I have put on the table that should be modified. But to say that you are going to acquire the licensed business of the company, that's a totally, different kettle of fish. So that clarification is urgently needed.
So in relation to this sentence here, this part of his sentence here, as I said, I'm trying to get the audio. We intend to negotiate new licensing terms and conditions with potential investors, meaning not JPS.
That's what it means. But that cannot be what he means. When you read through the rest of the statement, it says that the JPS is aware of the government's intention to modify the terms of the license, and that theme is also very much current in the rest of the statement. So I really believe that it requires urgent clarification, because if you're saying that you're going to terminate the license and start to negotiate with other people, then you can't move in that way. You have to acknowledge that there are going to be issues related to compensation, and that compensation amount will have to be your starting point, and that could be massive. So, I mean, you might very well come to a point where both government and JPS can't live with the proposed new terms of a license, and then your part company. But in any event, the issue of compensation will arise.
So, to your mind, is there any way in which the scenario, as JPS is reporting it, and as would be better for the Jamaican people, though?
Well, I think there has to be an acknowledgement that where we were in 2001 is quite different from where we are today. And that you now have to establish a framework for not only greater transparency, but for greater competition. For example, I don't believe in this day and age we can suffer a license for 20 years duration. I think, especially because technology is changing so rapidly, you have to have leeway for embracing new technologies. And I would therefore not go for a license for more than 10 years. That is one. We have had severe problems with the insistence of the JPS in asserting its exclusivity in relation to those persons who operate in exclusive economic zones. These are people who are really operating for the export market. So they're not operating to deal with the domestic situation. And they have been hamstrung by the high price of electricity, and they believe that they could generate and distribute within these free zones electricity at a fraction of the current price. I think they should be accommodated. I also believe that there has to be now in the license the issue of electricity theft, because since 2001, when the government divested JPSCO, the theft problem has not decreased, it has increased. And so every person who pays electricity bills today, that person is paying 20% more because of electricity theft than that person uses. So there are things that need to be changed, but this is not the way you go about it at all.
Couple of questions. So
Sure.
Again, let's say for argument's sake, this happens. So it would then be the government would have to acquire the business from JPS, pay them compensation, and either run it while finding new investors, or else that negotiation process with new investors would have to be taking place now, so that you move from JPS to new investors. Would that be correct?
Yes. And bear in mind, when you speak of compensation, it is market value compensation.
Okay. So the other question, though, does it seem like a flying of the kite, though? In other words, hey, forcing you to the table and with a kind of threat of acquiring the business over your head to force concessions and better terms.
We see a lot of that in North America recently, and perhaps it is a ploy, a negotiating strategy. Yes, so we might very well concede that is the case. The important issue, though, is that JPSCO is today generating and distributing electricity. And if you're flying a kite, you really don't have a long time to bring the parties around the table to start to negotiate new terms of license. It's not easy. And you might say you have 2 years. You need to get around the table from now, and you need to establish a framework, and the parties must feel, the JPSCO must feel comfortable that this is not an act in futility, and at the end of the day, the business will be taken over by the government. So I think that a new license must have certain provisions that enable a better framework than exists today. I also agree that from the experience of the hurricane last year, Beryl, we have to insert provisions dealing with emergency and how that is properly regulated to ensure that normalities return as quickly as possible, and so on and so forth.
Okay, in terms of renewables, because that's one of the things the minister was speaking a lot about, and we know there's been a lot of change in that regard. I know there's still concerns over the sustainability of renewables in terms of their, the somewhat sporadic nature sometimes of how they operate. What kind of changes would you like to see there?
Yeah. Well, the reason why we have not been able to take on more renewables is because of government policy. When we left office in 2012, the proportion of renewable to the overall system was 12.5%. And as you know, we had established Wigton Wind Farm, we established a 20 megawatt solar farm at Content Clarendon, and the BMR wind in Malvern. Today, the same proportion exists, 12.5%. So nothing has really happened during this period. And that should have been the responsibility of the government, because the government has responsibility for procurement, for establishing the demand mechanism for the growth in new generation. That hasn't happened. You're correct that the perception is that renewables are not stable. What we have seen today, because of the dramatic improvement in the technology for solar panels, for inverters, and most importantly, for storage, batteries, you can almost deliver now 24-hour operation of renewables. So I believe that we are at the point where renewables, because of the storage capacity, can replace
All right. I'm going to have to
other fuels.
Gonna have to leave it there. We talk
Yeah.
again. This is an ongoing issue. We appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, Phillip Paulwell talking to us, opposition spokesperson on energy. Let's take the break. When we come back, we get some more thoughts on this issue of the JPS license. We'll soon come.
Radio Jamaica, active for the good of our nation.
Corruption is rampant at the highest levels of this government. You will remember during my budget presentation when they tried to prevent me from saying some critical things about governance, even shutting down the sitting of Parliament. Well, I went on the street and I said what I had to say, and I will say it here again. The failure to disclose the identity of the so-called illicit 6 MPs who are under investigation by the Integrity Commission for illicit enrichment remains a festering sore, only made worse by the Prime Minister's gag order on cabinet ministers speaking publicly on these matters. But wait, comrades, I have to rewrite that part because it is no longer 6. It has gone to 8. So let me say it again. The failure to disclose the identity of the so-called illicit 8 MPs who are under investigation by the Integrity Commission remains a festering sore, only made worse by the Prime Minister's gag order on his cabinet ministers and MPs speaking publicly on these matters. Comrades, I had to hurry up and say that a second time, because before we reach and finish here today, maybe it will move from 8 to 12, the way how the number of labor rights illicits seems to multiply like gremlins. We will put a stop to such shenanigans. We will change the law so that all Integrity Commission reports must be published on Parliament's website within a short time, perhaps 24 hours of being sent to Parliament, so all Jamaicans can read those reports. Comrades, it is time to change these things. Accountability and transparency matter, and that is change. When the PNP forms government, our job is to create an environment in which Jamaicans can thrive and achieve their versions of the Jamaican dream.
Miller.
When the game gets rough and this life just seems so tough, make we talk, my people, make we talk. When this town becomes an ugly place, don't let it erase the smile from your face. Make we talk, people, make we talk. Conversation is the key, a guiding light for you and me. Spark a talk and you will see. Conflict solver A to Z. World leaders master the art of self-defense just by talk. So people, make we talk. Hey, we're living in a world that on ourselves we must depend. Make we talk.